It's cute. I just went on live and I'm giving people a peek at your apothecary, which is really awesome. Sorry I didn't tell you I was doing that. Alright, cool. So what we're looking at right now is we're doing our first interview with Dori Midnight in North Hampton, Massachusetts, and this is her amazing apothecary. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is her office. Office of a healer. Her table, and look at this, Dori Midnight! Woohoo! Awesome, so psyched to be here. I'm gonna set this up and come over. All right, I've moved it all around, so hopefully we'll, my head will be in it.
We need to look.
Oh, sure, that's a good idea. Why not, right? Like, just so we don't do the whole interview otherwise.
Your head is in it.
All right. Hey, everyone, thanks for joining us. Welcome to our first, interview, for Hive Live. Super excited. Last night I was in Newark, did my first video for Hive Live to introduce it. Had technical issues, it was so beautifully and perfect. But you want to know the coolest thing is that it's had 1,000 views.
What?
I know! And lots of really amazing comments. So if you watched that first video, y'all, thank you so much. I just feel like this is the beginning of such an exciting journey in the next month and beyond. Being able to explore in people's words, in healers' words, what healing really means and what's happening in real communities and in people's hearts around how to take care of ourselves, how to take care of each other. So I want to welcome you. Thank you for being my first person that I'm interviewing. That's awesome. It's really thrilling to be here in Western Mass, such a beautiful land, beautiful country out here. Mm-hmm. Land of a lot of, so much intelligence out here, so much wisdom. So why don't we start with if you could just give me a little snapshot of your life, right? Nothing, we'll get into the healing bits in a little bit, but if you just give us a little snapshot, that'd be great. And if you want to talk to me, great. If you want to talk to the camera, great. Whatever.
Okay.
Whatever's comfortable.
Yeah, I can do both. A little bit of both.
Yeah, find your way.
Our third being there that's actually 1,000 people.
Exactly, the third of many, as it always is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My life. Well, it's always of course, doing healing work is my life, is a part of my life, so it's not a separate thing. And I live here in North Hampton with my sweetie, and I have an almost 18-month-old who maybe will hear. I don't know.
Great.
I have this beautiful practice that I feel so grateful to get to be with people in. And I love to dance. I love to cook. I love to be outside. I love being in community. I like making things, making art, making beautiful things. I just turned 40 last year.
How's that feeling?
It's good.
Good.
Yeah, 40's good. It feels really good.
That's awesome.
I mean, I feel like I'm it's funny, I think when I was in my 30s, I thought I was getting old. Mm-hmm. And then when I hit 40, I was no, now I'm I can feel the way in which I wasn't, but I didn't know that then. Yeah.
Totally.
There's a Jewish tradition that supposedly you couldn't become a rabbi until you were 40. So there's some, even though I don't subscribe to patriarchal and hierarchical ideas of age like that, there was something about turning 40 that gave me this feeling of I could be in my work and my life and sort of in my priestessing in a different way of just there is a way I've gone through this chunk of life that feels different.
Yeah, there's a wisdom that comes with time.
Yeah.
That's very particular.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome. Well, it's always great just to like hear the celebration of 40 versus the anxiety of it.
Yeah. No, I don't, I mean, you know, I definitely feel like, I'm like, oh yeah, my knees kind of hurt.
There's that
getting up from the floor, I'm like, this is what people are talking about. But actually, no, I had like a huge dance party and like I had outfit changes during it. And I'm all for like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's lovely to be alive.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's awesome. So Dori is a community-based healer, intuition-based healer, herbalist, plant medicine, stone medicine. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. Uses a framework of anti-oppression in her work, which her pronoun? Sorry, I hadn't asked before.
Oh, great. Lovely to have a transparent process about it. How about you?
Oh, thanks. Pronouns he, she, and they.
Great.
Yeah, and it's very fluid with whatever.
Great.
Yeah, whatever you can change in any moment.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Is that your little one?
No, that's the cat.
Oh, that's the cat. Oh, cool. The cat's here too. So we're going to be talking about that. So the first question I want to ask about your work is, can you tell us a story, you know, about how you came to your work?
Yes. You know, I feel like I get asked this question a lot, and I think because I'm such a, like, I have a lot of relationship with spontaneity, like, I haven't yet kind of been like, this is a story I'm going to tell. So it's both, like, it's a very, like, living story. So I'll see what comes out today.
Perfect.
But I would say, like, you know, for me, a lot of what brought me into my own healing work was my own healing.
Yeah.
I'm a cancer survivor, and that was like a really big piece of it for me. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 21.
Oh,
yeah.
That gives me chills.
Yeah.
That's so deep.
It was really young to be going through something so intense, and so like to be up against, like, thinking about my life at that time, and really different than what my peers were thinking about, you know. And, you know, and that, like, coming into that also just, like, from, you know, my own trauma history, sexual trauma history, and so I already felt like I was coming in with, like, into that with a lot of, like, intention about, like, how to live in my body and how I wanted to be in my body and how I wanted to be in my aliveness. And then coming up against my, like, this idea of my death and, like, really young, and then interfacing with the medical world. And the ways in which that didn't feel like healing. Like, I'm so grateful to a lot of allopathic medicine and the ways in which, like, I was cut open, and that's not something I know how to do, so I feel really grateful to, like, the magicians that know how to cut people open and take things out and put you back together. Like, that does feel like magic to me. You know, but I also was, like, really just noticed the ways in which, like, it didn't feel like there was, like, here's this tradition that's about, like, keeping people alive, and yet it didn't feel like it was about my aliveness. And so I think from there, you know, seeking out different kinds of healing, like, really, like, I'd always been interested as a kid, like, I just was really into, like, making potions and being outside. I was really into, like, magic as a kid, and as a teenager I was, like, a weirdo, like, witchy dyke, like, very early. Like, I just, like, came into, like, so for me, like, all of that was wrapped up into, like, my queerness, my feminism, my activism, magic, and healing. Like, that was kind of with me throughout my whole childhood and young adulthood, and then coming into this kind of, like, initiation of cancer and feeling like I had access to those things in a way, and then I just, like, deepened into it, and then kind of allowed me to step into, I think, really, like, you know, it widened me to be able to hold wide space for other people's pain and for other people's journeys, and to, like, be in the mystery of, like, that my work is not about, like, linear healing, really, which is what I think I learned through that process. So, you know, it's like many things. My mom always, like, used a lot of herbs with us, and was not, like, a big fan of allopathic doctors, and so I think I knew that was a possibility. My grandmother was, her mom, my mom's mom, was like a person who like didn't know how to relate to humans, but was like an animal person, and you know, like basically lived with squirrels and birds and talked to animals. And so I think also for me, like, you know, there's many layers of my story, and my story is doing healing work, and part of it is like in this lifetime about like always being oriented to that stuff, and then coming up against really painful things and having to do my own healing. And then part of it is also, and like getting to find teachers and supports, both of like human and more than human. And then part of it is really feeling like a connection to and the support of like ancestral traditions and ancestral healing traditions, and both of the ancestors I know and knew and got to witness, my great-grandmother and my grandmother, both of whom, you know, were witches, basically. And then feeling like in the past, you know, 20 years of my life, connecting with like my ancestors of spirit and ancestors of what I didn't know, who, you know, I feel like I just come from a lot of like priestesses and witches, and
there's a lot of potency in that lineage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you connect,
yeah,
you know, with known and unknown, there's just so much power available,
yeah,
right, that you can bring into the now for what people are trying to heal right now,
yeah.
right? It's not, I love the nonlinear piece, and I love the relevance is a funny word, but just the wholeness of the wisdom over time and space.
Yes, yeah, and being able to connect to that, and you know, not just not feel alone, like feel that support and feel that you're coming from, you know, something.
Yeah. Feel like you're coming from something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna go check and make sure it's
Great.
working.
Great.
Because
yeah,
I just sort of.
It's a lovely conversation.
It's so lovely.
So
Oh yeah. Okay. It looks like people are. Yeah, there's people watching. So hopefully they can hear us.
It's so magical.
It's so awesome.
So we're talking, and I mean.
I know. We're so happy you're here. Hopefully you guys can hear us. I'm assuming you can. That's why I'm talking a little louder. I don't usually talk this loud. But maybe they're like, you're screaming. Okay, so we're gonna weave all that back in. Thank you for sharing all of those threads. It's so inspiring. It makes me feel all warm inside. Talking about the ancestors and lineage. For people who don't know anything about, who didn't grow up with plants and herbs, and a grandmother who was connected to animals and spiritual journeys, connected to healing. For people who don't know anything about herbalism or the work that you do, how would you, in the simplest form, describe it?
Well, first I want to say, like, I love sharing my story, and I love, like, it, you know, I feel a warm feeling too, and like whenever I kind of like tell my story kind of like that, when people be like, how did you come into like doing this kind of like witchy work that you do, I also want to like just pay attention to the ways in which like there are a lot of narratives in our culture about like who gets to do what.
Yeah. And
that, and I think like things like Harry Potter doesn't help, but like, you know, just like that somehow you have to come from something like that kind of lineage, or you have to have had, like that there's like this narrative of like specialness or exceptionalness that I really think doesn't like, it doesn't serve us, because I think we all have access to intuitive powers. I think we all have access to magic. I think we all have access to being healers, and like to sort of like really disrupt that exceptional narrative that it's like there's not like this is my story, it's exceptional to me.
Yeah.
And I feel really like blessed and grateful for where I come from, and I just like I really truly believe that like that's something that everyone can access, and that's something that everyone has, and we just get disconnected from it through trauma and through oppression and through schooling and all the different ways that we, you know, get disconnected from earth and get disconnected from wisdom traditions, and through colonialism, and so I guess I just want to say that too when I share my story, just that
I love that.
To kind of not have it be like a romantic thing that's like, oh well, like I have like a lightning bolt on my forehead or something, and that's how I can see through my eyes or whatever. My other eyes.
Your other eyes, totally. Well, I really appreciate that you say that, partially because I've had people that I've asked to do this interview process in the next 30 days that have said, I'm not a healer, and I say, you know what, you're doing, you helped edit a book on healing sexual trauma. Actually, you are a healer. Like, you work in a safe, sex positive boutique. Actually, there's a lot of healing going on in there.
Totally.
So part of this series is absolutely about reframing how we think about healing and liberation, and centering people's experience and voice in that. So I'm so glad you said that. I think it's a perfect piece of wisdom to drop there.
Great. Yeah. It feels really important that like we give ourselves permission to do that, and to bring like our gifts, whatever they are. So my work, I guess I would describe it as like I do intuitive healing work. So what that means is I do a lot of deep listening. I'm not trained as a therapist. My training is, I've done a lot of herb training. I'm trained as a clinical herbalist. It's not what I practice. I also went to interfaith seminary and was trained in spiritual counseling. So there is like this element of counseling to it, but it's not psychodynamic based. It's more about like connecting people with their own spirit, or with spirit, whatever you want to call it. And when I say deep listening, I mean like I'm deeply listening to words that people are saying, and then I'm also listening on many levels. So I'm listening to body, I'm listening to guides and ancestors and allies. I'm listening to like a chorus around them. I'm listening to past. I'm listening to future. I'm listening to dreams, and I'm just like. And when I say listening, I mean I'm listening, but I'm also seeing. So for me, a lot of information comes visually. So we'll be talking, and I'll be getting information, but then I also will just close my eyes and see what comes, and I get a lot of visual information. And then I share that with people. So I'll say like, here's some things that I was noticing. I saw this animal. I saw like this image that was happening, and how does that resonate for you, or what does that remind you of? And it's a conversation really of like what resonates, and how is that relevant to what people are coming with and asking and needing support and guidance with. I see a lot of people who are moving with trauma, and ancestral trauma, personal this lifetime trauma, and I work with plant medicine and stone medicine, and in the form of essences. So essences can be described lots of different ways, and people have lots of different language around it. Some people call it vibrational medicine, some people call it energetic medicine. One of my teachers just call it spirit doses. It's just like using tinctures at a really low dose. So it can be described lots of ways. For me, it's like, the way I really relate to it is that it's like magic, and that it works on like a level that, it can work on a physical level, but it can also, like, really where it goes is to our spirits, our emotional bodies, and our energetic bodies.
Could I ask a question right there? Is there, and one might not come to mind, is there like an example of like a way, like of a client that you work with, or with yourself, or with a friend, where you have given a tincture or had an intuitive image come, where obviously it happens all the time, where people have breakthroughs? Like, is there a specific, could you just share like a specific, and it doesn't have to be right now, but I'd love like if there's like a specific story to share with people, just to like illuminate it even more.
Yeah, let's see.
Obviously confidentiality and all that too, so
No, I can do that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, something I can share I can talk about the first essence I ever took.
Great. Love that.
So I was in my early 20s, and I was definitely like, I think for me, part of my struggles and part of it, like my initiation into doing healing work was feeling like I could feel other people's feelings, and I was like in other people's stuff, you know. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
I think you do. Do you know what I mean?
They probably do too.
I feel like this is like part of the struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, right on.
So, yeah, just feeling, and like I couldn't discern what was mine and what was other people's, and you know, I mean, it's like, there's a word for it called codependence, and then there's also just like sort of like being able to understand what in it was a gift and what in it was a challenge. So, a person I was working with at the time, a practitioner I was working with at the time, suggested that I take Yarrow essence, which I feel like is a lot of people's gateway essence into the essences, because I think it's actually, it's such a powerful essence.
What is Yarrow?
Yarrow is this beautiful plant. The Latin name is Achillea millefolium, and it's a, you know, it's a plant that grows on every continent, which is like, there's not many plants that do that. In fact, I don't know if there's any. It grows on every continent. It's a little, so there's lots of different kinds of yarrow, but the main one is it's a white flower. It has like a tall, long, very hardy stem. It kind of umbels out, and then has all these teeny tiny little white flowers. And its Latin name comes from, there's many traditions that use yarrow, but its Latin name comes from, it's named after Achilles. Its first name, Achillea, and it's supposedly the plant that Achilles' mom made a bath of and held him by the heel and dipped him in the bath to like create a cloak of protection, you know. So that was like he was immortal from it, except for his heel, which didn't get dipped into the yarrow bath, and that's where he was vulnerable. So it has this like long.
That's so cool.
It's amazing.
Wow, I mean, I've never heard that story before.
Yeah.
Gives me chills.
It's a really powerful, you know, it has a very powerful, like, long tradition of being used as a protection plant. And then medicinally, it's used for, like, it can staunch wounds, it can stop bleeding, and then it's also antimicrobial. So it's like, it's a great one to powder up and stick in a wound, to both stop the bleeding and to, you know, protect from infection.
So just to pause there. So could you use, like, a yarrow powder solely, or would you still want to go to Rite Aid and get your whatever they call it, your thing? Like, I mean,
you could, yeah, if you were out in the woods or in the future when who knows what's going to be happening in resources. Yeah, I mean, it's really up to a person what a person feels comfortable with.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean,
but it would probably take care of it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really what it would, you know, most likely it would take care of it.
Yeah. And you know, you'd want it to be, I mean, this is like not medical advice, obviously.
Totally. Not medical advice.
Okay. And then in the garden, yarrow is used. I'm just explaining the plant because this kind of helps one understand how essences work. Because we're talking about sort of like the physicality of the plant. So medicinally, it's an antimicrobial, blood stopper. It brings down a fever. In the garden, it can be used, it's like, it really holds soil. So it's a great plant to plant on edges that you want to keep in. And then it also, the smell of it is really good for like keeping deer away or other pests. It can be used as a powder to keep away bugs. Like it protects the edges. So what it does energetically and spiritually is like protect your edges.
Wow.
And the way that it does that is not through like creating walls.
Yeah.
But through kind of creating your own, you know, it's a plant that's about light. Like plants, you know, what plants do is that they take in light and they make medicine, or they make food, or they make beauty. So yarrow helps us like kind of fill ourselves with light and be contained in that light so that nothing else can get in. So you're not taking on anybody else's stuff because your edges are clear.
That sounds really good.
Right? We can take some right now if you want.
Yeah, we will take some.
So when I took yarrow essence, what I got was that it wasn't like I had to shut myself down from receiving information. I didn't have to kind of like close off so that I wasn't overwhelmed and bombarded by like other people's stuff, but that I could like really be in my own like orb, my own sphere, my own like big light bubble or whatever, really connect with myself, and then from there you know, it was a real teacher for me about like, if I'm really filled up like that, then I can like have space for and connect with from a place that's really grounded and protected, that like I get to be in my gift, which is like that I can sense into other people's stuff and like hold space for that, but like I actually don't have to heal it within my own body. I don't have to absorb it. You know, whether it's people I sit with or like family of origin or riding on the bus or whatever it is, being in a relationship, all the ways in which I think people who are oriented towards healing try to do all this healing work all the time unintentionally, and then you're just kind of a mess, you know?
This is such an, I feel like this is just such an important, beautiful piece of wisdom for healers, right? And for anybody who struggles with some codependency or taking on anybody's feelings, that this is a plant medicine that, I mean, who doesn't want their light to be like strengthened and amplified in a way that's not about creating, you know, harsh boundaries. Like it's about amplification. It sounds like, and how. I mean, that's so beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's what's so sweet about it is that it's really good for people who are both like mushy and lacy and holy and like, you know, really like that. But it's also really good for people who tend to be really standoffish. Partially they do that because they're like there's some mushiness there and they're just like, you know. So it's also really good medicine for people who tend to be kind of like have that kind of like metallic or hard shell, to be able to soften that. It's like you don't have to do that work. There's this plant ally that can come in and help you feel protected so that you can soften a little bit, so that you can receive love, so that you can connect with people, so that you can like have all of the delicious things that come with kind of being more open without feeling really blown open and vulnerable and scared, you know?
Beautiful. That's amazing. They can work on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah.
I imagine that the people that are watching this are now totally freaking excited about Yarrow. So like, if whoever's watching this, like, where, like, if they wanted to run out and get some today, like, where would they go? How would they get that?
Well, so you can work with Yarrow in lots of different ways. You don't have to buy an essence. This is something that what I really love about working with plant spirit work is that, you know, you could find some, depending on where you live, and like right now there's like, you know, snow on the ground, but
Here.
Yarrow grows in cities. It's a very hardy plant. So, you know, you could ask around at garden stores or go to a botanical garden or whatever and just get to know what it looks like, sit with it, spend some time with the plant. I think that's really lovely. It's like a really beautiful way to kind of undo a capitalist or materialistic relationship with medicine, is to be able to be like, all you need is a plant, you know, and if you don't have the plant, all you need is to like a picture of the plant even, and just be like, connect with this being. This is a being that's like available to us. So that we don't have to buy things, you know, to kind of
So awesome.
get the medicine that we need.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I really like just having a little piece of yarrow and sticking it in my pocket and having it with me, having it on me and smell it. You know, you can get yarrow flower essence, you can get yarrow tincture, or you could get, they make like yarrow spray. And I would just check out like your like co-op or health food store or local herb store and ask them what they have that's like a yarrow tincture or yarrow flower essence. There's a lot of different places that make things like that, whatever kind of form people are called to. So,
nice. Yeah, so just be open to what way it might feel right for you.
Yeah, like maybe you want to take an essence, maybe you want to, you know, for people who don't ingest alcohol, using spray can be really nice.
Oh, lovely.
And then having the plant itself is always, you know, lovely and a way to, like, you know, you can sleep with it under your pillow, you can take a bath with it. You know, I really love bathing with plants. So, like, sort of going back to one of its traditional uses of making a big tea, straining out the plants and then pouring it in your bath, and then you've got, like, you're bathing in this total, like, light protection.
That's amazing. That
smells really good.
Right, so that's a pretty easy and very affordable thing to create to support whatever essence you're trying to cultivate.
Yeah, that's like under $5. You just get some, you know, if you go to an herb store, you get a little bag of yarrow. It should cost you probably like $3.
Wow.
And then, you know, boil it up and put it in the bath. It's a great way to connect with plants.
That's so awesome. Great. That's so good. I think that's such a great tip, right? Something that's super accessible. That was awesome. Thanks for sharing that piece. Like, it sounds like that was a real, like, turning point for you around being able to be in the world, be with people, and be able to retain your your sense of self and not get too wrapped up in what was going on with the other person. So really awesome to hear about Yarrow too. I'm kind of glad that medicine came in for Hive Live, and feels really good.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We're gonna probably be on for another, just so folks know, 20 minutes, half an hour. Got a couple more questions to ask Dori. If you've just tuned in, I'm here in Western Mass in North Hampton with Dori Midnight, herbalist, intuitive healer, all around rock star, getting to know her. We're talking about herbal medicine, we're talking about community-based medicine. And the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is, it sounds like you've been working with people doing healing work for a long time, and a word that a lot of us are using and talking about now is about trauma and what that is and how to work with it. And there's so many people I know that are on healing journeys and either struggling alone or with some sort of practitioners or support, whether it's a movement practice or a healing practice or herbal practice, trying to kind of figure out how to heal these deeper wounds, whether they're from your own lifetime or ancestral, as you say. Healing can be sometimes like really uncomfortable, right, and really scary. And certainly trauma coming up in the body and in the being from my own experience, it can be very, very scary. And so I was just wondering if we could talk a little bit about it can be uncomfortable, and what's your, I don't know, do you have anything to share about that, about what helps, or how to self-support, how to care for your heart or your being when things just are really uncomfortable?
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, God, the design around healing is not very motivating to want to do healing work when you're but you don't feel better. So why do I want to do that? I'm going to feel worse at first, It's a rough design to kind of go towards the discomfort knowingly. So I think in that way, it just makes so much sense that we often go into patterns that are around familiar patterns that might not serve us, but are at least have the comfort of familiarity. One of the ways that I work with trauma with essences is really well, first of all, I think about it. I think about how healing within capitalism, in which what we live in right now, late stage capitalism, I think we're all healing from this culture of not feeling like we're enough and always feeling like we're messed up. And so there's a way in which that creeps into our healing systems, and we feel like when we work on ourselves, it's we're trying to get somewhere and to be free from trauma, or to be that there's a linearity to it, and there's also this expectation around sort of not being fucked up or something.
Totally.
And so first I like to just I think about really transforming that frame to just being what if our intention on what healing looks like and what healing is not, first of all, not linear, but also isn't trying to be something or somewhere else. What if actually our intention is about being more ourselves? And if that's our intention, then it's it makes it okay to go towards the trauma or go towards the pain, because it's I have to go there in order to become more myself, because I'm not trying to get away from myself. I'm not trying to get away from the pain, and I think also not just living in not just capitalism, but an allopathic, we're all kind of trying to be more productive. And to be more productive, sometimes we have to make the symptoms go away and make the pain go away. We don't have time and space to be in discomfort and to heal, really. So, I feel like having a really generous and wide frame around what healing is helps, because it's we're not trying to be more perfect skinnier, whiter, richer, like all the different ways that like we're told we have to be better.
Right.
And that like healing from trauma is not part of that too, where it's like we're trying to be more functional.
Right.
And then, you know, one of the ways, and I think, you know, for me, so much of that wisdom, that way of being comes from like disability justice perspectives and ways in which like rethinking about what healing looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then with essences, like when I'm holding space for my own or for other people's healing in relationship to trauma, like rather than going right towards being like, okay, we're gonna go to the most uncomfortable place first, or we're gonna like go right for, we're just gonna transform, we're just gonna get really in there. Like I'm really a lover of like subtle and slow.
Nice.
And I think like moving that way creates a ground where people can do a lot of transformation, or it's just really ready to transform. So the first thing that I really like to focus on is like, how do we create a feeling of protection for you? And
I love that.
If you feel like you're being held and protected and supported, then the transformation is going to happen.
Right.
And you don't have to like work on it. You don't have to stare it in its face. You don't have to go in the front door. So it's kind of like, I think of it as like a backdoor approach in a way. It's like, let's connect you up with some seriously supportive allies. So I work with like a lot of stones. I work with ruby. Ruby is like a stone that helps like create a feeling of safety in the body when like that a body has never experienced that. So it's like, you can be here. It's okay. You can stay here. Because if you're going to stay here, then you're going to be able to heal better, you know?
That's right.
I work with an essence that's a circle, literal circle of stones to feel like, okay, nothing can get through this that's not going to serve you. Like you can be, like, if part of your trauma has been about violence or being hurt in any way, just like that's going to be the main thing you're going to be oriented to and thinking about. You're not going to be able to focus on your own healing. So like, how do we create a feeling that it's like you have company, you have support, you have like safety, and you're in this cloak of safety? So that's really the first thing like that I think about. And it's what I really like about that is that then it's like less like directive and linear and like a to-do list, like I'm gonna feel my trauma, you know. It's like, okay, like actually your first step is about like creating a feeling of protection, and that's something that probably you haven't experienced a lot. And so these plants, these stones, these animals, and maybe even some humans, like maybe like as a practitioner I get to be part of that web of like, how do you feel a sense of protection on this earth? And like, if you feel protected, then you can like bring your light, you can bring your gifts, you can bring your beauty, you can really be here and do the healing. So I think
right, like healing, like if I'm feeling safer and I'm feeling like protection for the first time in my life, or like I'm not always under, like my vigilance isn't always up, then my body and my being naturally starts to the healing properties in my body, in my being, just start to move naturally. Because for the first time, maybe I can let down a little bit, and then the deep wisdom in my this incredible body being will just, you know, kind of knows how to do it.
Totally.
Right. So we create the right conditions. Right. And that's so much about what I believe healing is about too. Then it's almost like healing sort of just happens. It's not about focusing on the healing, it's about creating the right conditions. So I'm so happy to hear you talk about that today.
Yeah, and I think part of why I love working with plant medicine and stone medicine is that it's also like kind of takes us down a notch as humans and thinking about like how we're like, you know, we think we have any control over anything, you know, and like that we might even have like, you know, we can guide our healing process, but like, you know, being able to also just like rest and be like, you don't have to be vigilant, you know, like call upon these plants, call upon these stones, call upon like a circle of tigers to like circle your pelvis, you know, like imagine if you had tigers circling your pelvis, like
that's
you
badass.
could, right, like you could relax a little bit.
That's
so
good.
I think
right, like you gotta imagine it and really connect to it, right? Like you gotta really like imagine it so much that you can start to feel it. right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's where I think, you know, I work with kids a lot, and being able, like, kids are like already right there, you know. I'm just like, who do you want to call? And they're like, well, I have this, you know, I have this elephant, and I have this fairy, and I have this, like, all these different allies and guides, and we really lose that, you know. So like inviting in our child selves into the healing process is so important, because it's like much easier to be like, you know, use our imaginations for healing, and not that it's like we can imagine ourselves out of, you know, I don't want to say it's like we just like think ourselves positive or whatever. It's like that's like positive thinking, but I think that there's an element in which like really drawing upon the power of our imaginations and the power of like what we have access to and can connect to help us heal, like that we just don't have to do it on our own, because I think a lot of times being, especially if we've experienced trauma, it's such a contractive experience, and we tend to get smaller, we tend to contract, and we tend to disconnect, and so it can be really important and also really helpful to connect with like more than human worlds, to feel like we have company and we have support in it. We don't have to be isolated and do it all on our own, you know, and be like these like kind of intense warrior survivor energy where it's just like, you know, like you actually can receive some support and some help, and it's there for you. And
well, we know that shamanic traditions have done that from the beginning of time. Right, and so it just feels like almost like we're reconnecting with that, which is in our bones, which is in our lineage, which is in something that is so deep in our DNA.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, these are not new ideas.
Yeah.
Or new traditions at all, and like, you know, they get lost in patriarchy and colonization.
That's right.
And so, you know, reconnecting with them is powerful because it helps us heal, but it also helps us heal from colonization, and like helps us heal from all the ways we've gotten disconnected from those traditions. And, you know, and that's so much of, I think, how, you know, cultural appropriation and spiritual appropriation happen, is like a hunger for connection, and just like being able to connect within one's own traditions, one's own ancestral traditions is so important.
Yeah, and doing the work to be able to figure out what those are and connect with them.
Yeah. Right, which is like, you know, I think especially living in a white dominant Western culture, it's like we think it's about research, which is, you know, that can be really helpful. I think like doing DNA research and reading a lot and asking around for like book recommendations around like ancestral traditions, but there's also a way in which like we dream into it, you know.
That's right.
And like we know it's in our body,
right.
it's in there, and so like knowing, you know, for me, part of my lineage is Sephardic Jewish, and I know that like the first time I did flamenco, I was like, oh, like first of all, I've been stomping my whole life. Like I was like a total like tantrum thrower as a child. I was like, I've been doing flamenco since I was 4. But also like when I heard that music and it moved through me, I was just like, oh, this is like my body knows how to do this. And I think like a lot of people have that with like things that don't move through our mind, like music and dance and spices and flavors and things that travel through our body. It's like we really get to connect with that body wisdom. It's so much, I don't know, it's like such a deep healing and wisdom that our bodies have, that if we like allow that to and kind of can turn our mind off of the figuring it out. I'm so glad you spoke to that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great reminder and invitation to just the remembering that it's just like all available. It just is, you know, we have been so mentally co-opted, you know, that we have often, it's just like the volume's been turned down on all these other threads of intelligence. And so being able to do whatever practices, or taking a walk or cooking, or that they just naturally come through if we just make a little bit of space for them. Right? And that the more we sort of allow it and practice making space for it, the stronger it gets. Right? Because it's just because lineage is, you know, just thousands of years of beautiful intelligence.
Totally. And I think actually like doing what you're doing, and I think making more space to talk about it is also so important, because it's sort of like the more we talk about it, the more people feel permission to do it.
That's right.
Like, oh, like I can just dream, I can just like make a dish or dream into something. And so I think it's really to kind of like release the taboo or stigma or whatever of like, you know, and I think it makes sense that there's a lot of fear I'm talking about. I think there's like, you know, been like hundreds of years of where it hasn't been safe to like
That's right.
be our like weird, witchy, wild, queer, whatever selves, you know. And so I think like part of our healing is to be like, we get to be in that, we get to be big in that, we get to shine that out into the world, and that it's like, you know, really important that we do so, because we're going to be ancestors whether or not we make babies out of our bodies. Like, we're all you know, holding space and creating paths for folks to come after us, and you know, that can be really just to feel like you're in service to that, and that's part of like why you're doing what you're doing and healing, that like your healing is part of the healing of, you know, I think like taking it out of like this context of sort of like self-care, being so focused on like our own little personal lives and our own comfort, and being like, you're, you know, you're really doing this work and doing this healing work because you're in service to something bigger, which is like the healing of our communities and the healing of this earth and the healing for those to come and the healing of our ancestors. And you know, that's why we're doing this. You know, it's not just so that like I sleep better at night or whatever, although I would really enjoy sleeping better at night.
Yeah, right, both and. It's both and.
It's both, yeah.
It's like vitality and sense of safety and wellness and choice becomes more apparent in my life now, and like to not at all forget that the vastness of the impact on generations. I always say to my clients, like when we're working, when the transgenerational trauma comes in the room, I always say, we're working with your great grandmother right now, or your great great great, and that like we sort of feel into the being, the spirits that come into the room, and then, you know, as things move and we do this resolution work and in the way that it wants to move, then of course your great great grandchildren come into the room, right? The future comes into the room, because it changes everything in time and space in this like incredibly nonlinear way. And the potency of the reverberation is you can't. It's sort of infinite, right? Because we're literally changing the blueprint of, you know, of being. So I'm so glad you're talking about all that, and I want to start to wrap up, not because I feel like we couldn't sit here and talk for 3 hours, but I want to be really thoughtful about your time and everybody else's time. I just, you know, this quote on your website, Dori has this quote that says, "Healing ourselves is inseparable from healing our community and our planet." And I feel like you just spoke to that like so powerfully. And I want to thank you for being a person who is putting voice and practice to the interconnectedness of that every day, right? In all the ways that you do, as a parent, right? As a partner, as a healer, right? As a person in relationship with yourself and your realms of connectedness with plants and stones and the earth and ancestors. Clearly, like, you're a lighthouse on this planet. Just from the reactions that I've gotten from people who I've said, I'm going to talk to Dori Midnight, and people are like, oh my God, Dori Midnight, you know, it's like been so sweet. So I just want to thank you for being that. And I think it's just really brave to be a healer and to be that type of lighthouse. So I want to, just want to acknowledge that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, way to take it in.
Thanks. Well, you know, I mean, I think I definitely feel like such a part of a web of incredible people, you know, not just like, you know, my ancestors and stuff, but I just feel like I feel so grateful and lucky to be in community with so many incredible, like, that just makes it like I can exist every day, you know, to be around such beautiful and people doing such incredible organizing work and liberation work, and I'm just like infinitely grateful every day to be able to like be part of you know, healing work, but also liberation work, and that's like, it's an honor and gift for me.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. So good. Anything else that feels like important to say before we wrap up? There's so many more things we could talk about.
No, I mean, I'm really grateful for this work that you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't think I have anything else. I mean,
Great.
Other than everything.
Yeah, right. So you can contact Dori, like, kind of what's your work, like, if somebody was like, I want to have a session or whatever.
Yeah, so I do in-person and distance work.
Oh, cool.
So I work on the phone or on Skype. In fact, like, probably 60, because I used to be in the Bay, like, probably 60 to 70% of the people I work with are distance clients. So you can just contact me through my website. It's dorilandia.com.
Mm-hmm. We'll post that on our site too.
Find it through the Hive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I work with people, like, there's some people I work with just once and, like, just for a one-time thing. There's people I work with monthly. I do in-person, I do some hands-on work. I do ritual consultations. I work with a lot of people kind of helping create rituals for all kinds of life transitions. And I do some priestessing work too, like, I do blessings and those kinds of things, so people can contact me for any of those things.
Awesome.
And,
I also want to say on Dori's website or Blogspot, she's compiled a really great resource list of other healers that are also liberation, have a liberation lens, so I want to also point you to that. I'll post that on the Hive. And just a great blog, really great resources, for sure. I didn't mean to interrupt you though.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so
great.
I look forward to being connected to whoever feels drawn to connect with me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Y'all, thanks for watching. This is the first interview of many in the launch of the Hive directory, which is an affordable, accessible, hopefully very usable directories so that healers and transformational practitioners like Dori, people who are doing sort of more non-traditional healing work, people who are working with organizations doing racial justice healing work, writers, community gardens, like really, we want to really capture the innovative projects and people and practices that are happening all around the planet, so that we can find each other. So the Hive directory is just it's an offering in that regard, an organizing platform so that we can find each other and so that our communities can find us. So you can check that out. It's launching this month, thehivedirectory.net, and the listing costs, there's 3 price points. The first one is $35. Everybody gets the same for your membership, regardless if it's the $50 or the $75. It's a cost sharing paradigm. So what that means is just that people who have more can pay more, and people who have less can pay less, and so that everybody gets to be part of it and gets the same benefits. It's not some weird membership tiered program, which drives me crazy, that poor people don't get the benefits just because you don't have as much money. So check that out. Really excited about that. Tonight, Jacoby Ballard, amazing practitioner, yoga, social justice, trans, phenomenal person. Really excited, as have been a trans queer yoga teacher myself, really excited for that conversation. And then tomorrow morning, Salome Rahim, we're going to be in Albany, incredible, talking about mind, body, spirit, liberation, and social work. So we hope that you'll tune in the next couple of days. Love you guys. Happy love from North Hampton, Massachusetts. We hope you have a great day. We'll see you tonight. All right. Cool. Thanks, Tori.
Yeah.